Continuing with our functions, we'll now look at the reference and lookup functions. The key ones among them are Vlookup, called as vertical lookup, Lookup, which is horizontal lookup, and match. Vertical lookup and horizontal lookup are similar functions. It's just that when the data is organized vertically, you will use up the Vlookup function, and when the same data is organized horizontally, you would look at the Lookup function. Let's try and understand this using an example. Imagine you have this information given to you from a database of some, maybe an online retailer or some retailer. The serial number gives you the number of data sets that you have. There's an order number field. You have the name of the customer, and you have the value that the customer has ordered. For the sake of simplicity, we have just considered 10 records here, but in reality it could go into few thousands. And now the challenge is, you want to find for a particular order number what is the name of the customer and what is the value that the customer has ordered. In this case, we'll try to find for the order number 46 the name and the value. Now imagine if, as a normal human being, how would he look up this data? So he knows that he has to search on order number. So in this data set, you will look in the order number column, try to match the point at which you get 46. Here you see 46. The moment you say 46, then you ask, what do we need? So we need the name and we need the value. So you can get this as the under the name column. In that row we'll pick up the name, in that column we'll pick up the value, and that's the answer. So name is Martha and the value is 29,478. Now same thing we have to tell Excel to do, and for that we use the Vlookup function, since the data here is organized vertically. So let's look at the implementation. Equal to Vlookup. You'll see the help popping up and it says looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table and then returns a value in the same row from the column you specify. By default, the table must be sorted in an ascending order. This last bit talks of by default, in case you choose some default values. What they mean or what that is, you come to know when you look at the parameters. So after writing the name, once I put the left bracket, as you know, it will give you the list of parameters that the function requires. So here it says the first value says lookup value. The value that we are trying to look up is right here, which is the cell H5, which contains the order number that we want to look up, comma. Next it says table array. Table array refers to the data set from which you are going to search and extract the values. Just bear this in mind, that when you give the data table, you should begin with the first column in which you are going to search this value, the order number. In this case, even though the data is starting from column C, it's only in column D that you are going to look up the value. As a result, we'll start with column D, go to E and F, and then give this entire range. The reason we also select E and F is because the values that we want, the name and value, are contained in those columns. So we have to start from the first column in which you are going to search, and then include at least all those columns in which you are going to find the values. Comma. You have, it says column index. Now in this case, if you look at this table, if I assume this as my first row for the range that I have given, the name is in column 2. So here the column index number is that index 2, comma. The last parameter is in square brackets, which means it's an optional one. So it says it can take two values, true and false. And as you can see here, it says true approximate match, false exact match. Obviously we are trying to find an exact match, so we should ideally give 0. If you forget to give 0 here, unfortunately it will take a default value, and default value here is true. Hence, whenever you use the Vlookup function, you should bear in mind that the last parameter, whenever you want to find an exact match, should always be 0. And that's all you get. For order number 46, it is Martha, which is the name. Similarly, if I now want to find value, you can do on a similar fashion. Equal to Vlookup bracket. Again, on the lookup value is this, comma. The table array is again the same, comma. The column index in this case will now change, because this is column 1, column 2 and column 3, and it's from column 3 that we are extracting the value. So we'll say 3, comma, the last parameter we want an exact match, so I put a 0, and that's my answer, 29478, which you wanted. So this is an implementation for Vlookup. The 3 key things that you should always remember when you do Vlookup, or 3 key mistakes which people end up doing, which you should ideally avoid, are: 1. When you specify the table array from which you are going to search, which is the parameter 2, you have to include the first column in that table array as the column from which you are going to search the value. Second, while giving the table array, you begin with this first column, but you should at least include all those columns from which you are going to extract the values. Because sometimes what could happen is, let's say in this scenario, people just give column D and E, which means only 2 columns, and while giving the third parameter they specify column index as 3. If you have given only 2 columns, obviously Excel will only expect a value 1 or 2 in the third parameter of this Vlookup function. So don't make that mistake. And third is the last parameter. Since it's an optional, many times you exclude that. But if you exclude that, as the last parameter says, it will take a default value of true, which means it will try to find an approximate match, and to find an approximate match, by default the underlying table should be sorted. However, since we are finding exact matches, there is no need to use the default value, and we should always give the last value as 0. In 99% of the cases wherever you are going to use the Vlookup function, you will always use the exact match. The other function which we had talked of along with the lookup and reference function was the match function. If you see, equal to match, the help says returns the relative position of an item in an array that matches a specified value in a specified order. So now, as you see, match is going to return you an index value or the relative position. So if you have an index and you want to find at what index is this value, match is going to help us. So we can use match smartly in conjunction with Vlookup to get our answers. If you remember, when we gave the Vlookup function here, the third parameter we said 2 in this case. Here we said third parameter as 3. But can we replace this 2 and 3 using a match function? And the answer is yes, we can. Because remember, this third parameter which you gave in this lookup function here was the index value or the column number of this particular variable, the name here. So what I can do is, I know the table array which I had given started from column D, went to E and F. So then I can find what is the index number. If I take this row, I can find what is my index number, which means if I say equal to match, the lookup name is name for which I want to find the index value, comma, lookup array. When you are going to use the match in conjunction with Vlookup, the lookup array should always begin from the same column as you began your data array. In this case, it was column D. You begin with column D and then extend it. So here you are only looking at the header row, comma, the last value says exact match, less 1 for less than and minus 1 for greater than. But as we said, we want an exact match, so I'll give 0, enter. So as you see, what did match return? It saw in this array, this was the position 1, position 2, position 3. When it looked up the name, it saw it was position 2, so it returned 2 value. And it's this value which we can now replace as the third parameter of Vlookup. So if you do this, select this, go to the formula bar, select this without the equal to sign, do a copy using Ctrl C, press the escape key, you will come out of it, come back to this, go to the formula bar and click here, go into this edit mode here, remove this 2, delete the 2 and do a Ctrl V. Essentially you are pasting the formula of the match in here, and if you do an enter, you will see you get the same answer, Martha. So what it does, the third parameter, instead of you punching in the value, hard-coded value, you use the match function to get that index value, and that is the third parameter which you see here. Similarly, you can also replace that thing here. You can replace this 3 by the match function with the appropriate value in the match function. As we had said, the Vlookup function is similar. It's just that instead of the data being organized vertically, if you had the data organized horizontally, instead of Vlookup, you would have used the Vlookup function. And instead of the column index, which was the third parameter, you would have given the row index. The same 3 points which I have told you, which you should be careful about, will also apply for the Vlookup function. And there also you can use the match function to find the corresponding row index that you can replace as the third parameter for the Vlookup function. So with that, we complete the review for the lookup and reference functions. In the next session, we'll continue with Excel functions. Thank you.